In this video, I'm going to be going in chronological order in terms of Bardock's life. I'm not going to get into the old version of Bardock too much in this video. I'm only going to go over some slight differences and basically explain why I prefer one over the other. I'll do a separate character review for Dragon Ball Z's iteration of Bardock, but this is Dragon Ball Super's version of Bardock. So when Bardock is first introduced to us in the Dragon Ball Super manga, it is as a result of the Saiyans' attack on planet Cereal. Now, the first actual visual cue we get of Bardock in the story is him hanging from a building in his great ape state. And then he sees a surviving little boy running away, and he starts chasing him in his great ape state. And Bardock peers into this church at Granola and his mother Weasley. Granola passes out, and at this point, a character who is very reminiscent of Dr. Gero and another who is very reminiscent of Android 13. For the record, Toyotaro stated that whenever he drew this character Flake, who destroys the moon to knock the Saiyans out of their Grade 8 transformation, that he drew him with the idea in mind that he was Granola's father, which is pretty cool because he is standing up for his planet just like Bardock does later on whenever Planet Vegeta gets attacked. And I just think that's a really cool parallel between Flake and Bardock, the fact that they're both, the fathers of each character, and they both have very similar principles. If you consider that the interpretation, there's actually a big payoff to this later on. So Bardock, after following this little boy, he's a surviving Cerealian, he comes across Granola and his mother. Now, one thing people kind of miss here is that the reason Bardock is reminded of Guinea is because she attacks. Now, keep this in mind. The reason he is reminded of Guinea by Weasley is because she attacks to protect her son and defend him, and she has his best interest at heart to the point that she is willing to attack to defend her son, right? And you can see, like, the pointing motion that Granola's mom does when she attacks Bardock leads to him having this memory of Guinea. Now, Guinea is crazy about her children. They make that very clear from the beginning. She loves her children, especially Goku. And I'm sure if it was up to her, she would do whatever she could to protect Goku. And I think Bardock is aware of that. I think he's aware of that personality trait of Guinea, which is why Weasley reminds him so much of Guinea. So we get this scene where it's confirmed to us that Bardock has been gone for months doing his thing. While he's been gone, Guinea's had her baby. Bardock sees his new son for the first time, and it's shocking to him because, now, what's very interesting about this is I don't think Bardock had this same reaction to Raditz, okay? It is the visual, how much Goku looks like Bardock is a huge factor here. That's the reason he has that look. He's like, oh, wow, this is a mini version of me. You know what I mean? It really hits him like a ton of bricks. That's a little him, which I think is very funny. So he makes it a point to name him right then and there, right? And Guinea drops the bomb that she wants her son to grow up big and strong. So listen to what Guinea says there, right? She says that she wants Goku to grow up big and strong. And the look on Bardock's face after he remembers Guinea saying that explains his actions, right? He's starting to associate all of these things in his mind. He's starting to put together that Weasley is a lot like Guinea, and he's starting to associate all of these personality traits with Guinea, and not just Guinea, but his son, and the relationship that Guinea has with his son. The fact that she's willing to die to protect her son, and she wants her son to survive and grow up to be big and strong. All of this is like running through his mind extremely quickly. So the principles that Guinea has, wanting her son to grow up to be big and strong, being so willing to protect him and ensure that, he is there to survive in the future and thrive, has an effect on Bardock. He starts to relate to this. So one thing I want you to keep in mind is that Akira Toriyama has specified before that Goku looks at his family and his friends as nothing more than companions. Okay, and that's something that's very important to keep in mind for this set of events. Is it's not that Bardock necessarily quote unquote loves his family. It's that he has principles that he has associated with Guine's principles in terms of wanting others to survive and thrive, and that includes, your descendants and so on and so forth. Again, Goku, who is a character who seems much more loving and caring than Bardock, he himself only looks at his family and friends as companions. And Bardock is well known to protect his crew. He's actually a very, very popular Saiyan due to the fact that he protects his crew. And yet he still has the same perception as Goku, where he essentially looks at all of them as just his companions and his comrades. So this is where all of these wires start to cross in Bardock's brain. He himself holds survival as a very high value of his, right? And now he's seen this little boy that he associates with himself, and he wants him to survive and live a good life because he associates him with himself. And he also associates Guine with Weasley, who has those same principles, and it's like he subconsciously respects that. It's like it falls in line with his principles. He's not really thinking about it too much. It's almost like all of this stuff is just like hitting him, and he's not putting a whole lot of thought into it. Well, you know how it is whenever you have an epiphany. It's not something that you actually put a lot of thought into. It's just something that you sort of just realize, right? So, and I really love that they call attention to this by, Bardock checking around for survivors. Like, the word survive and survivors is thrown around a lot in this arc, and there's a reason for that. Bardock takes it upon himself to save Weasley and Granola. He follows Monito, a very important character in the Granola arc. He follows his energy signature to his location. He brings Weasley and Granola to safety, and when they get there, they're greeted by Monito. Monito is very taken by the fact that there's a Saiyan who is willing to, save a child and a woman like that. And when Monito asks Bardock why he did it, Bardock really doesn't have an answer for him, and there's a reason for that. That's because this is all happening on the subconscious level. He's associating Goku with himself, Weasley with Guine, and by extension, he's associating Granola with Goku. So this is just stuff, his principles of survival are starting to have the reverse effect where he's not prioritizing his survival alone. He's starting to prioritize other beings' survival that he associates with himself, with his wife, with his son, who also sort of have, the same principles that he has when it comes to surviving and defending your well-being and facing your challenges head on and, surviving with your own power. Like, Weasley, she fit his standard, essentially, So as a reward for Bardock's kindness, he is healed by Monito, and Bardock is really shocked to see that the Namekians have this capability. And Monito goes on to point out that, the most gifted ones can restore energy in the blink of an eye, which is cool. That's kind of like a senzu effect, So then Bardock's scouter starts freaking out, and he realizes that someone's close by. So Bardock gets a little bit closer, and he realizes that it is the Heater crew, the villains of the Granola arc. They are plotting to make a fortune off this planet. They're the reason that the Saiyans and the Frieza Force are there to begin with. And Bardock overhears all of this on his scouter, which is really important because, that means Frieza can hear it. Frieza can go back and listen to that if he wants to. And he straight up says out loud that they are plotting to betray Frieza. So this is probably the moment that Frieza first learned about, the Heater's true intentions. And Frieza was already paranoid of being betrayed by the Saiyans and, other people in his crew. So the fact that Elec was planning to betray him, no wonder he was so paranoid about all these people going behind his back and trying to dethrone him or kill him or destroy him. King Vegeta definitely would have had he had the choice. We find that out in Dragon Ball Super Broly. So Frieza really has every right to be paranoid of the Saiyans and the Heater Force. So Granola wakes up, notices that Bardock is there, notices his tail, and Monito knocks him out. so that way he doesn't endanger them any further, because the Heaters do in fact hear the ruckus, and they go to check on the noise, and when they get there, Bardock is there. He appears to be holding Monito, Weasley, and Granola up. He's in disguise using Monito's cloak, which I thought was really cool. And something interesting happens. When Weasley gets shot, because Bardock associates Weasley with Guinea, he has like this rage boost, where he freaks out because she's been killed. And as a result, he attacks the Heater crew. Now, Bardock himself even states that this is very uncharacteristic of him. He doesn't understand what's happening to him. And the reason this is so important is because that is to basically portray to you, the reader, that all of this stuff is stuff that Bardock's doing on a whim, right? It's something he's doing based on just his feelings rather than thoughts. And that's very important because later on in the story, they reference this specifically. The fact that, all of these actions by Bardock are kind of spontaneous, right? So the next flashback we get involving Bardock, Gas has found Bardock, Granola, and Monito. And Monito basically tells him, he's like, listen, take what fate hands us. You've done enough. There's no reason for you to lay down your life for us anymore. I don't understand why you're doing it to begin with. And Bardock's like, listen, dude, that's literally nuts. I'm not just going to, let these people kill you now. Gas drops this bomb that even if he flees, the Saiyans aren't going to last much longer anyway, right? So that's the first hint that we have that the Heaters are sort of cooking up something to, reassure the Saiyans' destruction, right? And then we get this really cool line from Bardock where he's like, nah, bro, it's you and your gang who have no future. So Gas uses this as a cue to attack Bardock. Bardock has this really cool scene where he acts very reminiscent of Goku when he first became a Super Saiyan, where he's yelling at Monito and Granola to get away from the fight because it's his fight now. It reminds me a lot of how Goku was whenever he was telling Gohan to get away so he can handle Frieza on Namek. So, Gas unleashes a little bit more of his inner nature, and then we get this scene where Monito goes and gathers the Dragon Balls because he plans on using them to rescue Bardock. So, Gas is just wrecking Bardock, and Gas, he thinks that he's humiliating Bardock, and that Bardock looks at this humiliating experience. But Bardock tells him, he's like, no, man. He's like, this is what I live for, right? And then he says something very familiar. Now, when Bardock says, nothing gets my blood pumping like a powerful foe, that's not only what Vegeta said whenever he was fighting Granola, but it's also what Goku said the first time he ever fought Vegeta. And now what this means, this line specifically means that when their blood gets pumping like that, their survival instincts are starting to kick in. So their body is basically thrown into the state where it's doing what it needs to survive. And that's very important because that was the key to Ultra Ego. It was the key to what Bardock does here. And it's also the key to what Goku does later on, thanks to hearing this whole thing via Bardock's scouter. So Tarambo communicates with Bardock and basically says, hey, do you need me to transport you back home to planet Vegeta? This guy's trying to wish for it. And Bardock's like, what the? He doesn't get it. And then he says, no, I would rather die than run from an enemy. Because that falls in line with his principles as a warrior race. Very samurai-esque, a warrior race's honor, their pride, right? So Monito contacts Bardock, and he's like, listen, this kindness that sprouted up within you randomly, he's like, it's going to save somebody else one day. And he knows that, you know what I mean? He knows that Bardock has the potential to do this again one day. And what's really interesting about that is that, now in the original translation, Monito speaks about this in a much different way than the Viz translation. In the original translation, Monito specifies that this is just something that randomly happened with Bardock. It sprouts within his heart, so to speak. And that's because Bardock is a inherently selfish person, and that's something that they really try to highlight, especially in this little set of events, because Bardock by nature, opposite to Granola, is a selfish person. He is a selfish person by nature. The only reason he wants to help this group of people survive is because it falls in line with his principles. Okay? He associates all of them with his own family, and due to his own principles, he thinks that his own family, the people that mean something to him, his crew, the crew that Bardock travels with, that he rescues all the time. The difference between Bardock and other Saiyans is that he likes to see other beings survive and thrive, because that falls in line with his principles. That's the reason that Toriyama specifies that Bardock is sort of idolized amongst his friends, because he's constantly coming to the rescue. He associates all the Saiyans with himself, and as a result, he wants to see them survive and thrive, and that falls in line with his principles. So it's not necessarily that he is as kind as the story is making him out to be. It's just something that it's something that he's passionate about. He just thinks that he just respects the idea of species facing obstacles, facing their death head on, and surviving as a result. And that's something that he respected about Muesli. Whenever he first saw Muesli attack him, he's like, like it reminded him a lot of Gine, because Gine, I would assume, has the same approach to things, right? She's a warrior, just like Bardock. Yes, she's no longer a warrior whenever she's introduced to us, but she's went on a lot of missions with Bardock, and given the chance, she would do exactly what Muesli did to protect Granola. And that's very important, because all of this is just happening as a result. It's not just like Bardock's not just being a nice guy. He's doing all this because of his principles and the fact that he associates Granola and Muesli with his own family. I can't stress that enough. And the story really goes out of its way to show you just how selfish Bardock is in this next set of events. Because whenever Monaito tries to wish Bardock away, Bardock is like, I literally don't take orders from anyone. I don't care. And he's like, I'm not leaving this place until I've beaten Gas. That's what I want to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So Bardock only does what he wants to do. Okay? It has nothing to do with morality. It has nothing to do with right or wrong or being good or not. He just does what he wants to do. And he wanted Muesli and Granola to survive, specifically because he associated them with his family. And that's what's going on here. They're really trying to portray the message that Bardock is by nature a selfish person, but that still led him to commit this seemingly selfless act, which is very interesting. It's part of the reason that I love Dragon Ball Super's version of Bardock, because there's a lot of depth to his character. He's sort of like what Goku would have been had Goku not been purified when he was sent to Earth. He's sort of an example of the character traits that Goku ends up conquering after he's sent to Earth, and he ends up becoming basically a pure version of his father. And I think that's very interesting, especially given the fact that Granola is a representation of Vegeta's negative character traits that he is trying to surpass, and Elec and Gas are a representation of the character traits that Frieza is trying to get past. So there's like a clear theme here within the arc. And in terms of Goku, he's always facing characters, I've talked about this in previous videos, but he's always facing characters who are a representation of the character traits that Sun Wukong used to have in Journey of the West. Sun Wukong in the original Journey of the West wanted to rule over everything. He had the same selfish principles as Bardock. He's very, very, very reminiscent of Bardock before he's purified. The way he goes about doing things, the way he's just like, I do whatever I want to do. I don't take orders from anyone. He holds himself in high regard. Bardock is very, very reminiscent of the Monkey King, and that's something I think is really cool. And the villains, if you go back and look at all their character traits, they have very similar things going on. Either they want to rule over everyone, they want to be the strongest, they feel that they are perfection. Whatever, they hold themselves to an extremely high regard. So Monaito gives up on trying to get Bardock to leave, and this is when we get the infamous Bardock wish that threw the fandom into a conniption. And listen, all you have to do to understand why this wish is important is go read the King Piccolo arc. The King Piccolo arc goes over in detail the rules of the Dragon Balls and how there are things. This arc itself does as well, but particularly in the case of Goku, if this wish concerns you, just go read Goku's conversation with Kami, because Kami essentially tells Goku that the wish is not the reason he's so successful. He's successful because he's not an inherently selfish person. The Dragon Balls test you for the miracle that you desire. And there's quite a few examples of this in Dragon Ball. So, for example, when Goku first resurrects Upa, he gets to see his grandfather Gohan as a result of that. When Bulma passes the test of the Dragon Balls, she ends up with a boyfriend, despite the fact that, she didn't get to make her wish. The fact that she had changed and grown as a person and essentially passed the test of the Dragon Balls, she ended up with a boyfriend in the original Dragon Ball. Krillin's the same thing. Krillin, when push came to shove, it didn't matter whether or not he was going to end up with 18 or not. It didn't matter whether or not 18 was going to be with him, because he assumed 17 and 18 were a couple. He didn't realize they were brother and sister. He still made that wish for her, and as a result, he gets a wife, right? And then 17 in Dragon Ball Super, despite the fact that he wanted his boat, he still wished for all the universes to be brought back. And if you remember, right before he left, he was saying he didn't care if the universes got wiped out or not. And he still ends up with his boat as a result of that. So there's a pattern here when it comes to Dragon Ball. And if you look at all the villains who have used the Dragon Balls, they all end up suffering a horrific fate as a result of using the Dragon Balls incorrectly. So, when you consider that, what Bardock did here when he made his wish essentially set obstacles in place that had Goku not handled them correctly, he would have been killed a long time ago. Minato is very clear that selfish wishes only bring doom, okay? They only bring doom upon whoever makes them, right? Kami is very clear about what you need to do in order to survive or pass the test of the Dragon Balls. He specifically tells Goku that the reason the Dragon Balls are set up this way is because he feels that mortals should not rely on the Dragon Balls, or God in his case, to take care of all of their problems. They should use their own power to solve their own problems, and they can't approach this from a selfish point of view, because again, that only brings doom, right? So what does that mean? Well, that means that when it comes to combat, when it comes to using the Dragon Balls in combination with combat, there's a very specific set of principles that have to come into play in order for you to pass the test of the Dragon Balls. Now, it's originally stated, it's also stated by the Elder Guru in this arc, that the Dragon Balls used to be rewards for Namekian warriors during times of great unrest. And the reason for this is because the warriors themselves were also expected to have these same principles that Kami expects people who use the Dragon Balls to have. And those are the people who get to use the Dragon Balls, and those are the type of people that give meaning and actual use to the Dragon Balls because they use them correctly. They use them to create hope for the future, okay? Now, in the original, not the Viz translation, but in the original translation for this wish, Bardock wishes that his sons would end up growing up big and strong. Okay, now when you think about that, you got to think about exactly what he's saying there. He doesn't want his sons to just grow up. He wants them to grow up big and strong. Okay, now this is not only very reminiscent of what Gine said about Goku, it's also very reminiscent of Goku's own desires. He just wants to get stronger, right? Goku is put into a lot of situations where he is tempted to essentially be like Raditz or Frieza or Vegeta or most of these characters who kill innocent people to survive and thrive over others. Needlessly going around killing people for your own survival is an inherently selfish thing, right? And especially killing someone in the name of justice, in the name of your own ideas of what's right and wrong, that is especially bad because that is also what you would consider selfish. Now, as the fight progresses between Gas and Bardock, Bardock is sent deeper and deeper into a near-death-like state. And when this happens, he's saved by Monito. Gas is about to kill everyone. And all of a sudden, Bardock gets this boost of power, and he starts surpassing Gas. And that is because he has thrown into a state of fight or flight, and his Saiyan body is responding to danger accordingly. His survival instincts have kicked in. Now, when this happens, the fight itself is very, very reminiscent of whenever Goku fought King Piccolo, and there's a reason for that. Now, if we go back and look at the King Piccolo arc, Goku goes through the exact same set of events as Granola in this arc. First, he's severely hurt by King Piccolo. Just like Granola is brought to near death, Goku is brought to near death. Actually, it's stated that he did die, right? And then Granola, when facing Vegeta, shows that he is willing to sacrifice his life in order to avenge his people. Goku does the exact same thing. With the water that Karin gives him that is poisonous, and if you survive it, you basically grow more powerful. And then after that, Bardock and Goku both are thrown into this state of fight or flight, and they're both thrown into this state where they're just thinking about who's going to win in a life and death situation. That's all they're thinking about is survival. It's not about any ideas of right and wrong. And Gas even, asks Bardock, he's like, what are you fighting for? Is this atonement for your sins? Is this for revenge? Are you giving in to your rage? And Bardock says, no, it's none of that. And then Gas asks him, what's running through your skull as you do battle? And Bardock says something very reminiscent of what Goku says to King Piccolo in the King Piccolo arc, and that is, in a life and death battle, all he's thinking about is victory, aka survival. Now, the reason this is important is because this is sort of a reference to the secret of selfishness that Dragon Ball always makes reference to, particularly in reference to Goku and Ultra Instinct. By taking on this amoral stance of just trying to survive, he's not doing this with selfish intentions, nor is he doing it with good intentions. He's doing it with amoral intentions. And as a result, he gets to survive and pass the test of the Dragon Balls while also being violent and taking out his enemy. Okay? And we get to see this firsthand whenever Goku fights King Piccolo as well. The only reason he comes out on top is because at that point, it's do or die. It's survive or be killed. Goku would have died. All of his friends would have died. Piccolo was planning on taking all of them out anyway, right? So there is no immoral or moral actions behind his actions at that point. He's just fighting to survive. And this prevents selfish intent. That's what this is. The reason this happens right after Bardock uses the Dragon Balls is because this is an example of why Goku survives and thrives under the Dragon Balls his entire life, because he approaches all of these situations in the same way those proud Namekian warriors used to in order to protect their planet, which allows them to use the Dragon Balls without the consequences of using the Dragon Balls with selfish intent. That's what this is. This is explaining the mechanics of the Dragon Balls and how they work and how they've affected the entire plot of Dragon Ball, which is why this is so important. This is not just Goku having plot armor wished upon him. This is explaining everything. This is explaining why Goku's special, because his nature, it's within his nature to be what the Dragon Balls demand you to be to use them successfully. And this is very, very important. That's what this entire arc is about, in fact, because Granola ends up using the Dragon Balls correctly later on in the story, and Gas and Elec do not. So this is very, very, very important. And it's the reason that I like Bardock so much, because it's also very reminiscent of the lessons that Piccolo taught Gohan when they first set out on their adventures together. It was all about survival. In fact, Piccolo reminds me a lot of Bardock. If you actually go and look at the dynamics between Piccolo and Gohan, you'll see that same theme is there. It's all about survival. It's not about being good or evil. It's about surviving. It's about amoral intent. It's just survival of the fittest, essentially. To summarize what I'm saying, the wishes on the Dragon Balls are not free, especially if you make them with selfish intent. But the need to survive, which is amoral in nature, allows you to pass the test of the Dragon Balls and survive to live another day. And essentially, that's what the Namekians have been taken advantage of through the warriors that they use to ensure the survival of their planet over and over and over and over again. Now, why did Toriyama choose to do this? Where is his inspiration for this? Well, It is, of course, from Journey to the West. When Sun Wukong became a Buddha, he still killed people. He still used violence. And he was able to do this and still maintain being a Buddha, which is the reason he's called the victorious fighting Buddha, due to the use of his survival instincts. When he would see his friends in danger, or if he would become in danger, due to the fact that he was a monkey, he was able to take advantage of his survival instincts and use that to have amoral intent, which keeps him from being affected by karma. And that's the reason he's a Buddha who is above karma, despite the fact that he can use combat and also kill/destroy people. He is essentially a destroyer god in a sense. He is a god who is justified in his destruction. And by honing into his survival instincts, you'll see these pictures where Sun Wukong has this circle behind his head. And that circle represents the circle of life, the karmic circle of life, the Buddhist circle of life, which is also known as the gold Dharma chakra. Essentially, when he has that halo behind his head, he becomes a representation of the Buddhist will of life. He becomes one with the nature of the universe, and as a result, serving as karmic justice for the villains and demons that he would face that would endanger him and his friends. That's where Toriyama gets the inspiration for this. Keep in mind that the only reason Dragon Ball is called Dragon Ball is because it is a replacement title for Journey to the West, because Toriyama originally intended on doing Journey to the West, but instead he made it about the journey to the Dragon Balls. So that is the reason the show is called Dragon Ball, okay? And the end goal of the Journey to the West was enlightenment. It was Buddhahood, okay? Which is why Goku wears the orange gi. It's why he acts the way he does. It's the entire reason that his character behaves and does everything the way that it does is to emulate Sun Wukong after he became the victorious fighting Buddha. It's all very fascinating. I would suggest looking into it deeper, but that is the inspiration for Bardock and Goku's actions in this case. Bardock serves as sort of the happy medium between when Sun Wukong was at his worst and whenever he was at his best, because midway in between, it was all about survival. It was like he did whatever he wanted. He was an inherently selfish person, but he would do random acts of good as a result of his instincts and as a result of associating others with himself. That's where Toriyama is getting the inspiration for all this. And as an avid Journey to the West fan, part of the reason I enjoyed this arc so much whenever I read it is because I caught on to all this stuff immediately. And I love the Granola arc as a result of these references, these subtle references they make to not only Journey to the West, but the mechanics of the Dragon Balls, why Dragon Ball as a series functions the way it does. Everything about it I love. I think it's a very necessary arc to portray this message to the fandom, and that's the reason I'm such a huge fan. I think the way Toriyama used this like crescendo of narrative purpose, to portray this message, like it hits you from all angles, through Gas's actions, through Alex actions, Goku, Granola, Vegeta, Bardock. All of them portray the same message overall, and that's what I really love about this arc, is because it's approaching that idea from every angle. You're getting to see in great detail why the Dragon Balls work the way they do, why the mechanics of them are so important to the overall narrative of the series, and why exactly Goku is special as a character within Dragon Ball, because he has all of these obstacles put in his way to tempt him to have selfish intent, to tempt him to make the wrong decisions, to be like his ancestors. And yet, he chooses over and over and over and over again to do the right thing, and as a result, he's rewarded very, very, very heavily for it. And I just love that. This leads me to the infamous Dragon Ball Minus, Rocket Child of Destiny. This is a very, a lot of people aren't very crazy about Minus. Personally, I don't think it's near as bad as people make it out to be, because I think that they have a false preconceived notion of the narrative of the story itself, but I'll go over that, okay? So, essentially the comic starts off pointing out that Bardock is out running around working for Frieza. doing his thing. And at this point, we see that Bardock and his partner are ordered to return back to planet Vegeta because he wants all the Saiyans there. Now, in the Broly film and in Dragon Ball Minus, Bardock is paranoid as to what exactly Frieza wants with all the Saiyans being there. It's almost as if he knows, based on his own attitude, his own need to survive, that's probably what Frieza is thinking and why he doesn't trust the Saiyans. That's the vibe I always got. And, as Bardock is walking around town, whenever he gets back, he basically finds out that Frieza is asking about the Super Saiyan, and of course, due to the way Bardock looks at things, the Super Saiyan is a threat to Frieza's survival. So, of course, he would put two and two together, and he would realize that Frieza feels that his survival and his rule is in danger at this point. Frieza himself actually even says that the Saiyans are too prideful and that they are a danger because they're not going to always adhere to his rule. And Bardock is a great example of that. Now, one big difference between the Broly film and Minus is that they point out that it'll be a month before all the Saiyans return to planet Vegeta. Dragon Ball Super Broly makes it seem like everything happens way quicker than it actually does. And at this point in the story, we see Vegeta essentially ignoring Frieza's orders to come back, just showing how much faith he has himself and how little doubt he has in his position in the universe. And I always thought that was really cool that is what saves their life, is Vegeta being essentially doubtless, because that is what Vegeta has to learn later on whenever he's trying to use Ultra Ego correctly, not to have any doubts about who he is and what he's capable of and what he is destined for. So I've always thought that was a pretty cool little note. Also, I like in Minus how it's pointed out that there are no more than a few thousand Saiyans left on planet Vegeta, and that's very interesting. So when Bardock gets back home, he goes and checks on Goku, and he basically tells Guinea his plan to send his son off. And then later on, whenever they're going to do the job, Guinea basically can't understand, and this is a huge statement on just how much Bardock from Minus was exactly the same as the Bardock that we saw in Dragon Ball Z, minus his influence from Guinea. And keep in mind that Guinea, her motivation is for her son to survive, specifically. And I've always found it kind of ironic and kind of strange that when King Vegeta makes it a point to point out that he wants his son to survive, nobody bats an eye. You know what I mean? It's like nobody cares that King Vegeta, this obviously prideful, malice-filled Saiyan, prioritizes keeping his son alive, and yet when Bardock does it, it's somehow out of character for the Saiyans to do it. That's never made any sense to me, especially considering the characterization of Bardock specifically. And what I mean by that is we learn, as I pointed out earlier in the video, that Bardock's motivation is survival. He's an inherently selfish person, right? And his ideals and his principles revolve around survival. Now, something that's I think a lot of people overlook when it comes to Bardock's interaction with Goku, specifically in the Broly film, is the fact that Bardock tells Goku to survive no matter what. And he also chooses planet Earth because he thinks that planet Earth is the best planet for Goku to go to in order for him to survive. And then in Dragon Ball Minus, he specifies to Goku to watch out for the Galactic Patrol. Now, what that suggests is that Bardock sending off Goku isn't necessarily for the greater good, as a lot of people try to pretend. It's not like the original Bardock where he's sent to, do evil, as people like to think. I don't even think that's the actual message of the original Bardock flick. I think it has the same survival of the fittest message that this story has. I think Bardock's intentions were not good nor bad. I think he associates Goku with himself. He wants Goku to live on as an example of himself. He wants Goku to survive no matter what, and that includes having to fight and kill the Earthlings or the Galactic Patrol or anyone else who comes in his way. Okay? Bardock does not, he's not sending off Goku necessarily because he's the saint. He's sending off Goku to survive, which means, by extension, that he is also sending Goku off to possibly destroy planet Earth. He does not care what happens to planet Earth. He just wants his son to survive. To me, I love this because it goes to speak to the amorality of the Saiyans and how they're not necessarily good or evil, and how they're just striving to survive and thrive as a species. And I really appreciate that, because people tend to look at the Saiyans as like these evil entities, within the framework of Z in the original special. And I've never agreed with that. I think they've always done what they've done in order to survive. They've always just done it as an extension of needing to live. And Dragon Ball Minus really makes it a point to kind of hammer this home by not only Bardock's characterization, but also the fact that there is only 2,000 Saiyans left. You know what I mean? So Goku being sent off to survive, in my opinion, is actually way more poetic than him being sent specifically to destroy Earth. And I know that's going to be a controversial statement, but the reason that I feel that way is because it is amoral by nature. That's what I think is so cool about it. Also, as it's been pointed out multiple times throughout the story, specifically by Grandpa Gohan, had Grandpa Gohan specifically not found Goku, nobody would have been able to handle Goku, and he would have eventually became a great ape and destroyed the planet anyway. This allows the story to maintain its merit when it comes to Goku gaining the nature that he did on Earth thanks to Grandpa Gohan. Because what did Bardock say to Goku? He said, survive no matter what. Goku was sent to a planet where the Dragon Balls reside. Now, whenever he first starts his journey, he starts his journey off to specifically go find the Dragon Balls. And had he not been found and raised by Grandpa Gohan, he would have not had the prerequisites in order to survive that journey. And so Grandpa Gohan essentially, within the context of Dragon Ball and the use of the Dragon Balls, did exactly what Bardock wanted and prepared Goku to survive the worst. Now, as I've stated earlier in the video, Kami states that whenever you go after the Dragon Balls, and as we've learned specifically in the Granola arc, even after you've attained the Dragon Balls, they test you, okay? So, and that's something I think a lot of people ignore and overlook when it comes to Bardock's Wish, is that the first thing Goku does when he goes out into the story is go after the Dragon Balls, which means that Goku, by the extension of not only being a benefactor of the Dragon Balls, someone that had someone use the Dragon Balls on them, but also someone who is, by extension, going on the journey to attain them, suggests that Bardock's wish to make him stronger comes true through all of the obstacles that he has to face as a warrior on his way to go attain the Dragon Balls. Goku is the result of like an accelerated version of mortal development caused by the Dragon Balls. And had he not gained the nature that he had underneath Grandpa Gohan, he would have perished as a result of his father's intentions for him. He would not have been a benefactor had he not maintained the nature that he gained from Grandpa Gohan. And the Granola arc specifically does a great job really just explaining the mechanics of the Dragon Balls. You know, you've got Bardock, someone who's selfish by nature, becoming a benefactor of them as a result of just doing some random selfless act, rewarded him. Whereas Granola, and keep in mind that the Ceruleans are anti-Saiyans in a sense. If you look at their relationship with the Nameks compared to the Saiyans, the Ceruleans are essentially anti-Saiyans. And that's what makes Granola's character so cool, in my opinion, is the fact that he is an outlier of his race, much like Goku. He ended up becoming very different than the average Cerulean as a result of his upbringing, sort of an opposites to what Goku and Grandpa Gohan went through, which I thought, I've always thought that was a pretty cool thing about Granola. But Granola, as someone who has a nature opposite to the Saiyans in terms of being, and Bardock specifically, in terms of being selfish, all that was irrelevant. The fact that Granola was selfless by nature didn't mean anything in the end because he had selfishness sprout up within him, and as a result, him trying to use the Dragon Balls was almost his doom. So, due to this, the story makes it pretty clear what the expectations of the Dragon Balls are. And I think that's overall what a lot of Dragon Ball Super's arcs try to portray, is why Goku's special. A lot of the characters that he faces are just examples of character traits that had Goku had these character traits, he would not be able to succeed in life due to the fact that he doesn't have the correct nature to benefit completely from the Dragon Balls. And that's why I don't think minus Bardock, or Bardock and the Granola arc, is near as bad as people pretend. I actually kind of think that he serves the narrative purpose of Dragon Ball more than the original Bardock ever could. I think people just assume that Goku being sent to planet Earth to destroy it has more narrative weight to the overall context and narrative of Dragon Ball than it actually does in reality. I think that was never the most important thing about Goku's character, nor is it the thing that's highlighted the most as what makes him special within the story. What's always made Goku special within the story is the fact that he uses the principles of martial arts to do the right thing, and as a result, he constantly uses the Dragon Balls correctly. He's constantly the benefactor of fate and the Dragon Balls themselves. And this just kind of calls attention to why Goku can do that. And it's due to his own choices. It's due to being able to tame his own nature and use the principles of martial arts in combination with his nature as a Saiyan to essentially be an instinctual being who is so pure of heart that he benefits greatly from his own nature. And I think that's what Dragon Ball as a whole is really trying to hammer home, especially lately. And big time with this latest version of Ultra Instinct, because Goku is essentially letting his heart guide his actions in this new Ultra Instinct state. His mind is calm, but his heart is not, and his blood pumping and the heat of battle is causing him to have all these instinctual reactions to things. And despite the fact that he's in this like fight or flight survival mode, he still tames his emotions and he still practices the principles of martial arts, and he benefits from that. And that is a huge statement on why Goku is so successful within the story, because in this case, he might have done that on purpose. He might have learned how to tap into his survival instincts in order to be as aggressive as he needs and yet not have malicious intent. He may have figured out how to do that at will within this point of the story, but he's done this countless times before in the story when he needed to. Again, when he fought King Piccolo, and also when he became a Super Saiyan. He's constantly being bounced back and forth between rage and calm, aggressiveness and being reserved, and he's constantly like thrown into this cycle of like trying to attain balance. And this arc does a really good job portraying that idea, because he uses what makes him special as a Saiyan to his advantage, but he used what he learned on Earth as a martial artist to tame his nature. And that again encompasses the entire point of his character, and that's the reason that he can correctly use the Dragon Balls, pull off all these things, do everything correctly, and that's the reason he's the MC. He's the purest character throughout the entire universe. But I hope this video helps you enjoy Bardock, Dragon Ball Super's version of Bardock a little bit more. I've enjoyed his character since its introduction. I think he's really cool. I was a fan of the old Bardock, but I really like the way this Bardock was handled specifically. Again, I'll probably do another video highlighting the original Bardock, because there is a lot of really cool stuff about the original Bardock that I do like. I just tend to lean towards this one because of how he expands on the more important narrative aspects of Dragon Ball. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I will see you guys in the next